back with Judith Vary Baker, and we're discussing the clinic in New Orleans, and also her book, Me and Lee, as it ties back to Lee Oswald. But Judith, you were associated with Dr. Ochsner, who was affiliated in cancer research, who was affiliated with Tulane University. And he, so people won't think that he's a back alley scientist.
Oh.
He is a world class, and he was world famous.
Absolutely. I mean, he was the surgeon and doctor for presidents of state, like heads of state, like Perón and Somoza. He would fly down and secretly treat them. Then, of course, he told the CIA all about it. He's famous, not only locally, but internationally. He was once the president of the American Cancer Society. And we could go on and on about his various credentials.
And
so he was a very famous man.
You have many pictures of Dr. Ochsner in your book. I'm looking at page 13 here.
Yes.
That talks about the death of the smoker.
Right. He, along with the other two doctors, they were all interested in smoking and cancer. So when I'm invited to work with Dr. Mary Sherman, also an eminent, she was an expert, and in fact when she died it says woman expert in cancer slain, in New Orleans.
And she worked for Dr. Ochsner, is that correct?
Exactly
what was that,
so.
her title? And
well, she was an orthopedic surgeon who was interested in trying to help crippled kids with polio, you see. Had to help fix their bones and all. She was an expert in bone cancer, and her papers are still being quoted today. So imagine how I felt that I'm going to be invited. Now this is after 2 years of work elsewhere, St. Francis College. Then I went to University of Florida, and that was through the auspices of Senator Smathers. Smathers is a friend of Nixon and of Kennedy, and here he's sponsoring me, and these people are all really working very closely together. The cancer epidemic, I believe, that we're facing today largely has been caused by the introduction of the SV40 monkey virus in its varied forms, mutated forms, so many that we can't keep track of them, because it lays latent in your system. You don't know what's going to happen unless your immune system is compromised to such an extent that the virus can take hold. So you can't link it to the polio virus.
You mentioned in the first segment that Dr. Ochsner stated that he found a sample of lung cancer and referenced it as being very rare.
Very rare at one time.
So it was very rare prior to that?
Well, early in the 20th century it was rare. And then all of a sudden it began to be, obviously people who were smoking were getting it. And worse, people smoking so much that was the only reason they were getting lung cancer. Well, what we know today is that whether they're smoking or not, for example, Alton Ochsner's own wife, who never smoked, died of a galloping lung cancer. How did that happen? So, and she didn't have mesothelioma or something in her lungs from exposure to asbestos. In other words, there are other things, other products, something else is floating around. And here he is working with a lung cancer virus. As his wife dies of lung cancer. It has nothing to do with smoking cigarettes.
And I think that's what makes this story one of the most amazing stories in America today, and your story about this. So Judith, tell us, when you got to the lab in New Orleans, what did you first see? What was your role? What was your role?
I had an option because I got there 2 weeks early, and my doctors were out of town. My university got out because it was a trimester system. I had nowhere else to go. I didn't want to go home. You can read in the book why. I didn't want to stay at University of Florida because it was closing down. I was offered this opportunity, but I had to leave right away, and you'll see why in the book. So I arrive, and there's nobody there to greet me. They're in South America. And we have newspaper articles about that. I get in with the wrong crowd almost immediately. But so Lee Oswald at this time shows up. Now we believe he was sent to help keep me from getting in trouble. I mean 19 years old, and 19-year-old who has moved in because she doesn't know where to go into the YWCA, and my roommates are 2 strippers, a Playboy bunny, and a waitress. In 5 days, I saw more of New Orleans. I saw more naked bodies in 5 days than I'd seen, in an entire hospital of babies. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just, what I saw was amazing. I was introduced by Lee Oswald, who showed up behind me in a post office, and now we no longer believe it was by chance. But at the time, I was very intrigued by him. I was miffed because I had a fiancé who had promised to write every day, and he hadn't. Anyway, Lee actually had entered New Orleans the day before and had eaten dinner with David Ferrie, who told him that he was working with Dr. Mary Sherman, this eminent cancer researcher and bone specialist, especially in bone cancer, as surgeon, an orthopedic surgeon. And I had been invited to work with her. What an honor. I'd also been told that at the end of the summer, I would be able to enter Tulane Medical School because of Dr. Ochsner, 2 years ahead of time, and just with everything paid for, a stipend and room and board and so on. Why wouldn't I want to go, under such circumstances? And to work with Dr. Sherman, who was internationally known for her bone cancer work. Now, my specialty was I'd been trained to handle monkey virus, which was of concern to them. I had been ordered to work with melanoma, that's in the newspapers. I had been working to make cancer more deadly, using the RPMI 1640 formula, but it was a precursor. But I actually could grow cancer probably better than anyone, because I memorized the formulas than anyone else, certainly my age. And I'm untraceable. I have no doctor's degree or anything. I arrived there. I think I'm going to work with Mary Sherman, and I want to meet David Ferrie because he says he knows her and he's working with her. Well, because of a set of circumstances that you can read about in the book Me and Lee, they thought I was someone they had asked to come on the clandestine side of things to help them. They were asking for a young person. David was a homosexual, and they thought they sent a girl so there wouldn't be any problems. And it wasn't like that at all, really, apparently. So he thought, okay, they've sent a girl because, I'm homosexual. They won't have any difficulty working together and all that. The doctors are out of town and cannot...
You weren't homosexual, David Ferrie was.
Right.
Okay.
He's saying that, I'm a homosexual. I guess they've sent her so that they don't have to have any worries.
Did you meet Lee Oswald first or David Ferrie?
Oh, I met Lee first, and
That was in the post office.
in the post office. And you see, it's fascinating. I don't know how much time we have, but basically, he saw me send off a letter to Robert A. Baker, and I put R. Rourke there for the return address because we were going to elope, and so he asked me to use his friend's name. The R written R looks like an A, the way I wrote it, and he knew Alex Rourke in Florida, see. But Alex Rourke was working with secret agent Robert A. Baker, and I'd written to Robert A. Baker what looked like A. Rourke instead of R. Rourke. And he thought, and then I knew Tony Lopez Fresquet, who was an anti-Castro. He was the son of the Castro's finance minister of Cuba, and I dated him in high school. And I knew all these anti-Castro people in Florida, and I knew an awful lot more than most people did about the anti-Castro movement. And then I noticed on his hand, he had his wedding ring on his right hand instead of the left, and I said, you must be coming from the USSR or something. But the first thing that really got his attention is I dropped a newspaper that I kept rolled up and carried around with me for several days. It said Jario on it. It was a cryptic message that my fiance said, put in the paper, if I see it, I'll know you got to New Orleans safely, because he didn't want me to make any phone calls. His parents didn't like me because I was Catholic, and so on. So I put Jario, pretty here, please write, and I put J.A. for my initials. And it was circled, and I kissed it with lips. When I dropped it, Lee picks this up, and he sees this circled message. Jario is like a kind of what is going on here? It looks like a cryptic message of some kind. And then for reference, because they didn't have any letters for Mr. Rourke, I told the postman there, well, look, I could prove that I'm so-and-so, you know, that I have a letter here showing that Robert wants me to use the name Rourke, and here's my Royal Castle slip. It shows I work at Royal Castle. I'm the person that is being referenced. Lee saw this Royal Castle, and that was where Robert Kennedy's men were making their drops, their dead drops, because it was only 2 blocks away from Carlos Marcello's hideout, and I mean his office that was behind Town and Country.
Robert Kennedy's...
Bobby Kennedy's men were spying on Carlos Marcello because he's going to go on trial. And they want to make sure he doesn't leave the country. They want to see who's coming in and talking to him. And they're trying to make a case. And Royal Castle's open all night. So I'm working there just 2 hours a day in the morning, early morning, because the waitress said, hey, you can make a couple dollars. I didn't know it'd be an hour trip in and an hour trip back. To anybody on the outside who's a spy, like Lee was, this woman is making an hour trip to just work 2 hours, an hour trip back, right at the time when Bobby Kennedy's people are dropping off their information from a night of surveillance, because I was in there at 6 in the morning. And then when he dropped the newspaper, he picks it up, and I say to him, Karasha, Tavarish, you know, like that. No, that's awful sweet, that's awful Russian.
Yes.
But I had learned how to read technical Russian because of my work in cancer research. And they were giving me free lessons, tutoring and everything, so I could translate what I was doing here, so I could check what the Russians were doing. That's how bad and how paranoid everybody was. The Russians might be creating biological weapons ahead of us. We have to know how to make cancer more deadly. That's what I was being told. And now I'm speaking some Russian. Lee Oswald, the woman, speaks Russian. He answers me in Russian, and he says, you know, it's not wise to speak Russian in New Orleans. Then I notice the ring on his hand, it's on the right hand instead of the left, and I say, you must be from the USSR. He thinks I'm really know an awful lot. So he takes me to Dave Ferrie. They think I'm the one that's supposed to be on the secret side of things. That's how it happened. That instead of working in her lab directly like I was supposed to, by the time the doctors get back, I know too much. And they've got to give me a cover job, and I'm working on the secret side of things. Then I find out we're in a project to kill Fidel Castro. They want the expertise I have gotten from making cancer cells grow faster than anybody else. They're working on something that comes originally from the polio virus contamination. It is SV40 monkey virus, but they've been working on it for a year. And now when they inject it into a mouse, in a week, a baby mouse will get a tumor as big as the mouse itself. This is a galloping kind, it's all, they have a ring of labs, but this ring of labs is broken. They do not want the ring to be complete, because then they'll know about each other. So it's broken by moving things to David Ferrie's apartment. And they kept me in the project on the secret side of things, because wait a minute, this girl had actually given mice cancer in only 7 days when she was working in a primitive, very primitive situation in her own high school.
So tell the audience what you did
All right. Well, first of all, I began saving. I began saving everything because I was now realizing I was in a project to kill Castro. And I was all for it. I was in Florida. I mean, they had aimed missiles 6 months earlier at me and my family in Florida. I saw the tanks rolling down to Key West, the troops coming through. We wondered if we'd be alive the next day at the height of the missile crisis. And I had learned to hate Kennedy for it until Lee Oswald changed my mind. He explained to me who was really involved, how this began with Richard Nixon originally to invade Cuba and so on. So I began saving everything.
But what did you do there at the lab, and
Well, I'm introduced to David Ferrie first, and they finally must persuade me that I should stay on the secret side of things. Although I could still go back in the main lab, but it'd be much easier because David really needs this person. Now
Where was the main lab?
The main labs, well, the main lab was Mary Sherman at Ochsner Clinic. I could still have gone there, but the fact is, by then I'd really gotten affection for Lee Oswald, and he for me. And we decided we'd start working together, and I'd stay on the secret side of things.
You had mentioned...
we really fell in love pretty quickly.
I can see that.
Yeah, we did.
You, in a previous discussion, you had mentioned there were several linear accelerators at different areas in the country.
In the country, yeah.
And some of them were very secret. Tell us about
Exactly. Not the governments to this day never tells you all the things they're doing. And in this case, there, as we know from Edward Haslam's book, Dr. Mary's Monkey, and he's actually talked to some of the engineers that created that accelerator. It's a linear particle accelerator, millions of volts, and usually they're linear this direction. Some of them, you know, are miles long going in a circle. This one was in a like a 3-story building, and they have it going this direction. Doesn't matter. It's still, you need the line, the linear part. See, if it's going down here, zapping the mice and cancers. I was never inside myself, but Lee had to go there, and he has a. You'll see he has an ID card. It says his name, and it says it's at the U.S. Public Health Service right there in New Orleans, and that's where they kept the linear accelerator. He'd meet Mary Sherman there. He was a courier, and his is signed by Dr. A.J. Hidell. Well, my initials are A.J.J.A., and then Hidell was Hyde Lee. But that name was also used, he said, that Hidell was used as a project name, not just by him, but by others. But he just made the joke it was Hyde Lee. So Lee is acting as a courier, but also the CIA was interested. Lee was O&I, he said, and he had been borrowed by the CIA. You know, when they arrested him, he couldn't say, I'm CIA. They would have killed all his contacts that he'd made for almost 3 years in the USSR. He's wearing his Marine ring, and I stress this to everybody. The Marines, oh, you're always a Marine. Once you're a Marine, you're always a Marine. And their motto is always faithful. He's wearing the Marine ring when he's arrested. It's his signal to who he really is. But all he can say is, I'm a patsy. They knew they had to get rid of him. He knew way too much.
And we're going to go back to that in our next segment.
So I'm falling in love with this man, and I'm willing to work with him on a cover job at Riley Coffee Company. While we're actually doing a lot of work under the cover of that job.
Now, was Riley Coffee Company just a front that they had?
Oh no, it's a big coffee company, but like Jerry Hemming said and others, they had been associated with the CIA for years. Why? Because they're getting their coffee from Central and South America, and it was getting other products from like Cuba, and now they're afraid all this is going to get cut off. So they are They are welcoming any kind of help from the CIA or anybody else to make sure that their company doesn't get compromised.
So now, I think you said the linear particle accelerator was at the U.S. Department of Health, and how does that relate to?
Well, it's a very special building, infectious disease laboratory.
Okay.
With guards in front of it.
Now, and where is that in relationship to the?
A few blocks from where Lee lives, a few blocks from where I live, a few blocks from where Ochsner lives.
And a few
yeah,
blocks
it's not
from the
very.
clinic.
You can walk to it from all 3 places.
And how about the clinic?
Well, the clinic is. They moved the clinic that same year earlier on with a huge procession of trucks from Prytania they call it, street where they had the clinic. Moved it all the way out to Jefferson Highway where. That land had been purchased from Clint Murkison for El Cheapo. Now Murkison and all these oil magnates in Texas were very close to Ochsner as well. They're giving him a Cadillac every year and so on.
We're going to have to break here for our next segment, but in our next segment we want to talk about this linear accelerator and whether that was a clandestine operation itself.
All right. And I'll go back to what this moving all this material to the Ochsner Clinic, one of these trucks got lost and helped establish these labs.
Wonderful. We look forward to this next segment. Hopefully you will come back to it as well. Thank you.